Day 35 of 100 Days of Code as I'm learning the Python programming language. This video is to track my progress and to hold myself accountable. For day 35, I focused on passing parameters through a GET request. So day 33, I did GET request with no parameters. Today, I focused on passing parameters through that GET request. So I'm going to start by jumping over to my request folder. And then if I list this out, you can see I've already created the file. So I'm going to execute Jupyter Notebook and it'll redirect me there. Okay, so day 35 GET request with parameters. It's blank, and I will start by importing my request package in. So this will allow me to use the request module. I'll also import in the web browser. The web browser is actually going to allow me to access a web browser instance from within the Jupyter Notebook. For this one, I'm going to write it as if it's prompting a user to enter a search term. So I'll set a variable and it'll be search term, and then I'll use the input function that will allow me to prompt the user to input text, and then I'll just add enter a search term. Execute that. My search term is going to be teach to geek. So in the next line, I'm actually going to set my URL. My URL is going to be YouTube. So I'll be searching YouTube and we'll pass the parameters through our code. And then I'll set a variable called params, and it'll be a dictionary. So it's going to actually include the key, and I'll just name it key. And then the value will be our search term. In the next line, I'm actually going to invoke the GET request. I'll just keep it rget as I have done, and I'll set that to request.get URL as well as the parameter. That's actually going to allow me to pass along the URL and the parameter. The next line is actually going to print the status code just to make sure that it'll be successful. And then if I execute this, you can see it returns a 200, which means that it's successful. And finally, if I print my URL, you can see here that it passed along the URL, but it also grabbed the search term. And that's because in line 5, I set my GET request to grab the URL as well as the parameter, and the parameter is the search term. And finally, I'll make use of the web browser module that I imported in. So it'll be web browser.open, and we're pulling our GET request. When I do that, you can see that it returns a true, the Boolean true, which means that it's going to open. And you can see it pulls up teach to geek. And that's a little bit about passing parameters through a GET request.